1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hello, Teresa.
Hello, Claire.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the podcast It Chooses You, our Smidgen edition.
A smidgen is a small, tasty bite of culture that we provide for you on Sundays.
As a courtesy.
Yes. It's included in the cost of admission is the smidgen episodes.
Compliments of the house. Here's your smidgen.
The chef will send out a plate.
That's right. It's the molecular gastronomy of the pop culture world, or just the culture world, as we've discussed. Sometimes we're relevant, most of the time we're not, and we're okay with that, and we hope you are too. Look, you can't be relevant all the time.
Yeah, it's so exhausting to be relevant all the time. Things have to be irrelevant before they're relevant.
Ooh. Deep thoughts.
See, that's the foam. That's the molecular gastronomy piece. I just foamed you, and you said, ooh.
And I said, I just paid $100 for this?
This week, Claire, I'm going to talk to you about quilts and quilting. Very briefly.
That's awesome.
Smidgen size. I am interested in quilting because, as you and I have discussed privately, and maybe on the podcast, I don't really know, my mother is making me a quilt.
Right.
My mother is an award-winning quilter. She has, or had, a quilt hanging in the West Virginia State House. She has won statewide competitions for her quilting, and she really likes it. She's very good with precision. She's very good at sort of following a list of steps and turning precision and a list of steps into something lovely.
Not everybody can do that, going from the micro to the macro.
Yes. Now, she and I do not have the same taste. There's a lot of maroon and hunter green and cream in her quilts. There's a lot of orange. We're just very different people. And so I said, hey, Mom, would you be interested in making me a quilt if I come up with a pattern that I like? And we sort of talked it over and we arrived at a pattern. And it was, of course, as every communication with either of my parents is, it was completely fraught for no reason. It's such a simple thing and just took so much emotional energy. But it's happening now, and it got me thinking about quilts that I like versus quilts that she likes, and where I might find some sort of crossover, where we might overlap, and where we might sort of like the same thing. And I like quilts ideologically for the reason that they take a long time to make. Even now, they take a long time to make with machining and, nobody's hand stitching a quilt these days, but they still take a very long time.
I would be a horrible quilter. I already know it. I don't even have to try.
Mm-hmm. That's not a question I need answered. I have the answer already, which is no.
Right.
But because they take so long to make, and you're touching it for this long, and you're engaged with it physically for this long, I feel like there's some sort of transmission of spirit that happens. And so quilts, by the time they're complete, are enlivened some way.
I love that.
In the process of being created. And also, in their finished form, they are warm, they are comfortable, they protect you while you sleep. You sleep for a full third of your life if you're trying to be healthy. They're important. They have a big role to play in a life. How long have people actually been doing this? Okay, so the earliest piece of quilted pieced fabric comes from about 3400 BCE. Yeah, right? People have been quilting for a long time, for lots of different reasons. There was sort of a quilt making revival, or it became a popular and important cultural phenomenon in the U.S. in the late 17th and early 18th century. I was surprised because it wasn't a way to use scraps. I always thought it was a way to, use the cabbage left over when you make a shirt.
Me too.
It's apparently not. And this is why. Because it takes a lot of time, it takes a clean workspace, and it takes having a lot of, free time. As we discussed in a previous episode, free time makes a lot of things possible. Persecution and also quilts. It was mostly a pastime for wealthy ladies. And it was a chance for them to show how wealthy they were by the quality of the fabric they were using, by the evenness of their stitches, by the intricacy of the design. Look how much time I had to spend on this. That's how well off we are.
So the quilt is a luxury item.
Uh-huh.
Which is so funny given our perspective today.
Uh-huh.
We're seen as this very homespun, homely thing.
Yes. So they hit that sweet spot of pretty and useful, which I really like, even though they aren't as interested in recycling, I guess, as I thought they were. So the quilt my mom is going to make for me is a modern pattern. It's a pattern I chose, very happy with it, and it'll be cute when it's done. There's a lot of different kinds of modern quilts. The coolest ones to me are ones that are called freeform quilts. And those are like using shapes and strips of fabric to sort of make an intricate, I mean, it's basically painting with fabric. And it goes in a direction that my mother will never go. And so I find it incredibly interesting. And some of them are more, I've seen replicas of Chagall paintings done in quilts.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure someone out there has done Motherwell in a quilt. It's that kind of reproducing something visual in a textile medium. I just love them so much. And as I realized that I like that style, I was like, well, I mean, when's the first time somebody did that? Was it always these sort of like 10 really popular patterns? Log cabin, 9-patch, pinwheel, Texas star, God's eye, right? Was it always that, or was there somebody out there doing basically like super modern quilting, but a go? And yes is the answer. Yes. So I'm going to tell you really briefly about a quilt. It's the Solar System quilt. It was done by Sarah Ella Harding Baker. She lived from 1847 to 1886. The quilt itself, she started it in 1876. It took her 6 years to complete. And it is a wool top applique style quilt that is not a scale model, but that is an accurate model of our solar system as it was understood at the time. Please look at this quilt online. She was born either in Ohio or Indiana in 1847. In the 1870s, she and her husband moved to Lone Tree, Iowa, where he had a general merchandise business, and she had 7 children.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Isn't it? So if you look, it's on a black background. The stars are done. The fixed stars are there, done on the outer edge. There's a comet that comes in and circles around the sun. The sun is in the center of the quilt. And you can see the first 4 planets there, ding, 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 really close together. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And Earth has its moon there. Little tiny single-stitch moon hanging out. It's so cute.
I see it.
And then the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is represented. Jupiter and the moons that they knew about at the time is there. Saturn with its rings, Uranus and Neptune. I heard a story when I first saw this that she wasn't allowed to go to school, and she heard about the solar system from a traveling astronomy lecturer, which, just imagine living in a culture or there's a traveling lecturer in astronomy coming through the town this week. He's going to be at the Masons Hall on Thursday. I love that. But she made this quilt so that she could teach herself and teach others about the solar system. And that's a very romantic story. It doesn't actually appear to be true. I think she herself was a lecturer in astronomy. She had had some schooling, and she made it as a teaching aid for herself rather than as like an act of defiance from someone who wasn't allowed to study what she wanted to study. But this is the kind of quilt that interests me the most, because not only is it all of those things we talked about before, it's a long time in making. It's somehow embodied, it's imbued with the spirit of the person as it's being constructed. This is about an intellectual topic she was interested in. Mm. And she was interested enough in it to make something beautiful and functional that was then also an aid to her in discussing this very intellectual topic. And so I don't have, an example for myself yet, but I'm wondering, if I was going to make a quilt about something, what would it be? Would it be a permaculture quilt? Would there be a pile of compost in one corner?
Right.
How would I represent an idea or a concept that I'm excited about in quilt form?
To devote 6 years to it, it has to be something you truly care about. You're devoted to. That's
right. Because how easy would it have been to put this down at any point? It's like, yeah, I'll do it later.
It's a little bit like getting a tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Except that the tattoo is over in a few hours, mostly.
That's true. But then you live with it for the rest of your life.
Other people live with my tattoos. I don't even see them anymore. Anyway, these are some of the many reasons I like quilts. You said that you had a quilt to talk about.
I did. I'm going to sub Smidgen here.
Okay.
I brought you a quilt story.
All right.
From the recent news, the Met Gala was at the end of September, and there's a rapper named ASAP.
Mm.
I don't know how it's said, but the S is a $sign. I probably sound so old saying that. And ASAP wore a quilt to the Met Gala.
I'm looking at it now.
I should also say, his girlfriend is Rihanna, so he's doing okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Designer Eli Russell Lynette's used this quilt that they thrifted in California to turn this into ASAP's outfit for the Met Gala.
Okay.
the theme for the Met Gala this year was something about in America. So his quilt is really on point in terms of that theme. But once all the photos came out of ASAP at the Met Gala, a woman came forward who is the original owner of the quilt.
Oh.
Her name is Sarah, and on Instagram, she said, "So my great-grandmother's quilt was donated to an antique thrift store a while back. When I saw the Met Gala photo, I realized instantly that it had to be the same quilt. I read the Vogue article about the designer finding the quilt in Southern California, and with his office not far from us in Venice, California, I demanded that my mom go look for photos of it on our old bed. She posted a photo of the quilt, and it is indeed the same exact quilt. And I just love the idea that this humble object rose to such heights of fashion, and that the original owner was able to see that. As I said, the quilt was crafted by her great-grandmother. The owner of the quilt was very complimentary of the way the quilt was used for the outfit.
Nice.
Also, she made a point to say, don't worry, everybody. We have tons of my great-grandmother's quilts and lovely items she made us. So it's not like I want it back or anything. She in no way wants to get anything out of this. She was just celebrating that.
Yeah, that's so great.
So I just wanted to share that quilt story with you and with our listeners today because I thought it was thematically appropriate.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing it. And thank you guys for being here with us as we share these things.
Please download, like, and subscribe. If you really enjoy this podcast, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/itchoosesyou, where you can help us keep the podcast ad-free.
Woohoo!
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.